Thank you, Alexei, for the opportunity to discuss the role of RWD in assessing the properties of drugs in general and orphan drugs in particular, because you were absolutely right by saying that RWD are important in assessing the efficacy of orphan drugs. RWD is probably the only way to understand whether this or that drug works or not. I'll try to give an example with spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA. This disease is the main reason for infant mortality due to genetic reasons. SMA is a very rapidly progressing disease leading to severe disability because the neurons of the spinal brain are damaged, and in this case, the patient cannot manage his skeleton and muscles. So most of the patients have a dramatic outcome, but we understand that SMA is not just a childhood disease, but also the disease of adults. In fact, spinal muscular atrophy was described more than 100 years ago for the first time, and we knew about this disease, but as for the reason for the development of this disease, well, we realized that it was due to the SMN gene. This SMN gene was cloned, and as for the drugs to treat such patients, these drugs appeared on the market just several years ago, and out of these drugs, only two are approved in the Russian Federation. As of today, only two drugs, but we understand that the Russian population of patients with SMA is basically the same as other SMA populations globally. In Russia, we have quite a lot of patients with SMA who need these drugs. In fact, the problems that we have are two. Well, first of all, as for orphan drugs, they have some limitations on the basis of the data obtained in clinical trials. Well, we cannot have large-scale centralized trials with the inclusion of several thousand patients. And the second problem, and Alexei, you have already mentioned it, the high cost of such drugs to treat orphan diseases in particular, and spinal muscular atrophy in particular. That is why we can use RWD to have a better understanding what's going to happen with patients who get this or that expensive drug, to what extent the government spending is justifiable, to what extent these orphan drugs change the situation drastically, to what extent they change the quality of life and the course of the disease. And of course, well, RWD help us better understand it. So you can see that the Spinraza drug that was developed to treat SMI, Spinraza is the well-studied drug, and you can see globally more than 11,000 patients got Spinraza. It is available in more than 50 countries of the world, and in Russia, more than 561 patients got Spinraza. It has been used since the end of 2019. We have real-world data allowing us to analyze the existing information and to make some conclusions regarding efficacy and safety of Spinraza. Yes, we can say that the Russian Federation has introduced very strict criteria of regulating the pharmaceutical market, very tough criteria for registration drugs. And of course, thanks to that, we can understand better the existing drugs and to have a tough selection during registration, and only practice is the criterion of truth. As I said before, only two drugs have been registered in the Russian Federation. That's nusinersen and risdiplam. Well, the third one will probably be registered soon. Well, both of these drugs are put on the essential drug list, such as risdiplam has been recommended to be put on the essential drug list. And you can see more or less patients have access to SMA treatment. Even unregistered drugs can be purchased by patients. And you know that we have a very famous project called the Circle of Goodness, and this organization provides funds for even unregistered drugs. Well, so you can see 11,000 patients with SMA, 800 got access to the 11,000 patients were treated with Spinraza, 8,000 patients, had early access to this drug. Well, you can see also the number of patients who are being treated with Spinraza in real clinical practice. Those patients who were in the early extended access program, and these were both Russian patients. Well, you can see 41 children got Spinraza or nusinersen in Russia, and that's very interesting. These are the data based on the extended access program. All patients on nusinersen are alive. So the efficacy of the drug was shown in real clinical practice on a relatively large population of children. And what is important, patients with SMA1 type 1 who have the lowest number of SNM neurons feel quite good, but our WD allow us to expand our knowledge. SMA is not just a child disease, it's also the disease of adults. With type 3, patients can live quite long, and we must have a clear understanding what the administration of a particular drug can lead to in adult patients. So we're accumulating our WD data, including adults, like 400 patients in different trials. Well, the results have already been published. Well, and you can see multi-center observational studies, and you can see that this cohort observational study data showed the clinical improvement of the motor function in a real cohort of adult patients. That's extremely important. So it's important to understand that our WD allow us to achieve this result. This is an Italian trial, almost 150 adult patients, 5Q SMA, mostly patients with SMA type 3, and you can see 1/3 of the patients had a 14-month treatment, and you can see that our WD data showed that nusinersen works not only in children, not only when it's SMA type 1 or 2, but also it works well in case of SMA type 3. Well, it is being accumulated in time. So real world data have shown that patients with SMA can get a good working drug. Patients can survive if they have SMA type 1. If we're talking about adult patients, RWD allowed us to understand that such drugs help these people maintain a good level of life. Well, despite the slow progression of SMA, well, patients still can maintain their lifestyle, and we can maintain the motor function of an adult, and thus we can say that in Russia we have randomized clinical trials data and RWE data obtained from a large number of patients with SMA. First of all, data on Sinersen, and we can say that these methods work, the drugs work, not just on children, but also on adults. And we can also use these drugs on adults with other types of SMA, such as type 3. Colleagues, thank you very much. That's all there is to it.